What if, in a single instant, everything you believed about your life fell apart? If suddenly a secret buried for almost 2 decades came to light, revealing that your past had been manipulated, your destiny stolen, and that you had lost something you could never get back? Leo built an empire. He made his fortune, his power, his success. But none of his achievements could prepare him for the shock of meeting Diana again, the only woman he ever really loved, and who disappeared without a trace. What was supposed to be a nostalgic reunion quickly turns into an emotional nightmare when he discovers the devastating truth. He has a son. But that's not the worst detail. The worst thing is that this son was snatched away from him before he was even born, raised far away, without ever knowing his true origin. And now Leo doesn't just have to deal with the pain of the revelation, he has to face the impossible, regaining what was taken from him. But how do you tell a stranger that you are his father? How do you put right a past that has been deliberately destroyed? The answer? You don't fix it, you fight. And that fight is about to begin. Secrets, redemption, and a love interrupted by time. But after everything, is there still room for a fresh start? Get ready, because this story will grip you from start to finish. The roar of the luxury car's engine cut through the narrow road, lined with ancient trees that seemed to whisper memories of a time Leo tried to forget. The familiar streets appeared on the horizon, bringing with them a strange sensation, a mixture of nostalgia and discomfort. He hadn't been back there for years, and frankly, he didn't want to. But business was business, and this was an investment worth millions. He parked in the central square, where everything seemed smaller than he remembered. Time had stopped there as he stepped out into a world of skyscrapers and unreachable figures. "Good morning, sir. Are you lost?" asked an elderly man sitting on a bench with a crooked smile. Leo let out a half-smile. "I don't think so, just passing through." But he knew that wasn't quite true. He decided to go into a coffee shop, the smell of fresh coffee bringing him an unexpected sense of comfort. That's when he saw her. Diana was behind the counter, laughing with someone she couldn't identify. Her loose hair swayed slightly as she gestured excitedly. She hadn't changed that much, perhaps a little more mature, but the twinkle in her eye was the same. Leo's heart leapt ridiculously, but he forced himself to keep his composure. He took a deep breath and approached. Before he could say anything, Diana turned and their eyes met. A second of silence. Then, without missing a beat, she crossed her arms and smiled. "If you're here to buy the whole city, I warn you that this cafe is not for sale." Leo arched his eyebrow in surprise. "Good to see you too, Diana." She let out a short laugh. "I'm not sure good is the right word." He tilted his head, noticing the irony in her voice. There was resentment there, hidden under a light, playful tone. He realized it wouldn't be as simple as he'd imagined. "Can I at least have a coffee? Or do you need a reservation?" Diana picked up a cup and filled it to the brim, pushing it towards him unceremoniously. "Coffee is free. But answers? Ah, those are quite expensive." Leo took the cup, sensing that this meeting wasn't just going to be a brief, nostalgic moment. Something was coming. The coffee was hot, but the atmosphere between them was warm, almost cold. Leo held the cup between his fingers, in no hurry to drink, just watching Diana in silence. She seemed different, or maybe it was him who had changed too much. "Are you just going to stare at me?" She arched an eyebrow, crossing her arms. "Or do you want to talk about the weather?" Leo smiled. "I was thinking about how debauched you still are. And I was thinking about how much you still think you can come in and act as if nothing had happened." The provocation was obvious. He leaned back in his chair, trying to decipher the woman in front of him. For years, her memory had been buried under piles of contracts, meetings, and astronomical figures. But now, there, it all came back with unexpected force. "I never understood why you just disappeared." His voice came out deeper than he had intended. For a moment, Diana looked away. A small detail, but enough for Leo to realize that there was something hidden there. Life happens, Leo. She shrugged. Some things just aren't meant to be. He frowned. Is that the best explanation you can give me? And you think you deserve more? She laughed humorlessly. Silence fell between the two of them. Outside, the noise of people coming and going seemed distant. I tried looking for you, he confessed, letting his guard down a little. Diana stared at him, now with an indecipherable expression. Oh, did you? She tilted her head. And when you realized you weren't going to make it, you just went on with your perfect life, didn't you? Leo pressed his lips together. The truth was that after a few failed attempts, he really had buried that story. But not because he wanted to. Do you think I wanted to move on? I think moving on was much easier for you than it was for me. There was something in her words, a weight that he still didn't understand. Before he could ask any more, one of the customers called out to Diana at the counter. She walked away without looking back, leaving Leo with a bitter taste in his mouth. He was beginning to realize that the past had not been as simple as he had imagined. Leo couldn't get out of the cafe as quickly as he had intended. Something inside him told him that Diana was hiding more than just past hurts. He could feel it in every pause, in every shift of the gaze, in every word spoken with irony too sharp to be just resentment. Outside, he walked to the square, trying to organize his thoughts. That's when a gentleman sitting on a bench looked at him carefully. You look familiar. The old man frowned, scratching his chin. Have you been here before? Leo stopped and looked at him. I lived here when I was younger. Ah, so that's it. The man smiled as if he had fitted a piece of a puzzle together. You remind me a lot of a boy from here. Leo just nodded politely, ready to continue on his way, but the man's next words made him freeze. Funny. You have the same look as Professor Diana's son. Leo's heart beat faster. What's that? Yes, her boy, 20 years old, maybe a bit younger, great kid, very smart. The air seemed to escape from Leo's lungs. Are you saying that Diana has a son? The old man laughed. Yes, of course. I thought you knew. Leo felt a chill run down his spine. How could he not have known? How come no one had ever mentioned it? Without thinking, he returned to the cafeteria. Diana was at the counter, absent-mindedly fiddling with a pile of papers. When she saw him approaching, she sighed and crossed her arms. Again, Leo. He stopped in front of her, his eyes fixed on hers. Do you have a son? Her smile disappeared. Her expression closed in a way that Leo had never seen before. Who told you that? Does it matter? For a long moment, the two stared at each other. Finally, Diana broke eye contact and picked up a cup, pretending to be busy. Go away, Leo. Not until you tell me the truth. She sighed, irritated. And what exactly is the truth for you? That I got on with my life? That I didn't wait for you to come back? I deserve to know, Diana. She let out a bitter laugh. Do you? Do you care now? Leo clenched his fists. Is he my son? Her eyes flashed with something between anger and sadness. Go away, Leo. But he wasn't leaving. Not now. Leo wouldn't leave. He couldn't. The impact of the possibility left him paralyzed for a few seconds. Diana looked away, as if avoiding him would be enough to end the conversation. But he wasn't going to take silence for an answer. Aren't you going to say anything? His voice came out huskier than he wanted. And what do you want me to say? She let out a sigh, running a hand through her hair. That I had your child and hid it from you? Leo felt a chill run down his spine. Then it's true. Diana hesitated. For a moment she looked as if she was about to speak, but she turned away, picked up a tray and began to clear the worktop. Diana, for God's sake, stop it! He put his hand on the tray, stopping her from continuing. I deserve to know. She closed her eyes for a second, as if gathering her strength. It's not that simple. Leo felt his anger rising. Simple? You hid a child from me for almost 20 years. Do you think it was an easy choice? She finally faced him, and her eyes were shining. Do you really think I wanted this? Leo wiped his hands across his face, trying to contain the flood of emotions. Who else knew about this? Your mother? She laughed humorlessly. My mother. No, Leo. My mother died before he was born. He felt a tightness in his chest. I didn't know that. So who helped you? Who made you believe that hiding it from me was the right thing to do? She looked away. You don't want to know. Yes, I do. She hesitated for a moment, but then spoke quietly, as if the words were burning her. Your family. Leo froze. What? She bit her lip and shook her head. I can't. He held her arm, not tightly, but enough to make her look him in the eye. Diana, tell me, what did my family do? She swallowed and pulled away. If you want answers, I suggest you look in the right places. Leo felt a shiver run down his spine. Something was very wrong. Leo's car cut through the narrow streets in a hurry. His heart was beating too fast for him to ignore. Diana didn't need to say anything else. Her silence was already an answer. If her family was involved in this, he needed to find out the truth. He parked in front of his mother's house, a place he hadn't visited for years. The well-kept garden was still there, as were the impeccable curtains on the windows. The same suffocating perfection as always. When he knocked on the door, it opened before he could even step back. I knew this day would come. Leo's mother's voice was cold, controlled, as if she was already prepared for that moment. So make it easy and tell me once and for all. She watched him for a second before taking a step to the side. Come in. Leo walked into the room and felt the familiarity suffuse him. Every object in its usual place. Nothing there had changed. I was with Diana. His mother poured coffee, as if it were a trivial conversation. I imagine it was. She told me that my family took her away from me. She paused for a moment. That's not entirely true. Leo laughed humorlessly. Then explain to me what is true. She sighed and finally faced him. You were young, Leo. Very young. You didn't understand anything about responsibility. That doesn't answer my question. She put down her cup with exaggerated care. When I found out that Diana was pregnant, I knew that your life would be ruined. You had a promising future, and she wasn't part of that future. Leo felt his stomach turn. What did you do? She didn't look away. Which was necessary. The silence was deafening. You separated us. I protected you. Leo closed his eyes for a second, trying to process. And the baby. She pressed her lips together. Diana insisted on having it. We couldn't allow you to throw your life away for a youthful mistake. Where is he? His voice came out lower, almost a whisper. Leo's mother took a deep breath. He's been given to a good family. The world seemed to spin. You took my son away from her. We made sure he had a decent life. Leo stood up so quickly that the chair dragged on the floor. That's not dignified, that's cruel. His mother stood her ground. You're only reacting like this because you just found out. Deep down, you know we did what was best for everyone. Leo felt his chest burn. I'm going to find him. And what are you going to do after that? Her voice was calm, but there was a defiant tone in it. He clenched his fists. I'm going to put right what you've destroyed. He turned and left without looking back. Leo drove aimlessly for a while, trying to calm the storm inside him, but there was no way. Every second, his mother's cold voice echoed in his mind. He's been given to a good family. As if it were a favor, as if they had done something noble by taking a son away from his parents. He stopped the car suddenly. He needed answers. He needed to know where his son was. It wasn't long before he found Diana at home, sitting on the balcony with her arms crossed, as if she already knew he was coming. You found out, didn't you? He got out of the car and stopped in front of her. You should have told me, and you should have fought for me. Her voice was firm, but her eyes carried pain. Leo ran his hands through his hair, exhausted. I didn't know, Diana. I tried to look for you, but... She laughed humorlessly. But your family made sure you gave up, didn't they? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I need to see him. Leo looked at her with a mixture of pleading and determination. Diana lowered her head and took a deep breath. His name is Gabriel. The name made something inside Leo stir. His son had a name, an identity. Where is he? She hesitated, biting her lip. He was raised by a family here. They adopted him when he was still a baby. Do they know who I am? No, and neither does he. Leo's chest tightened. 18 years old, the boy was already a man who had no idea where he really came from. What's he like? Diana smiled slightly, but it was a sad smile. Smart, stubborn, just like you. Leo let out a weak laugh. Then he must be unbearable. She rolled her eyes. You have no idea. For a moment they were silent. Then Diana sighed. I never wanted to hide it from him. But how could I show up out of the blue and say, hey, your whole life was built on a lie? Leo swallowed. He needs to know. She stared at him, vulnerable. What if he hates us? Leo squeezed her hand lightly. Then we'll cope together. Diana nodded, and for the first time since his return, Leo felt that he wasn't alone in this. The wind blew lightly that afternoon, but inside Leo's chest, everything was a storm. He felt anxiety eating away at his thoughts as he walked alongside Diana through the park. With every step, he tried to imagine what it would be like to see Gabriel for the first time. He comes here almost every day, Diana commented, keeping her eyes on the soccer field. He likes to play with his friends. Leo followed her gaze, and then he saw him. A young man of 19, tall, agile, running across the pitch with a ball at his feet. Leo's heart raced. It was like looking at himself younger. The features were there, the determined manner, the firm posture. My God, he murmured, unable to look away. Diana smiled. I know. Every time I look at him, I remember you. Leo felt a mixture of pride and guilt. How many moments had he missed? How many birthdays? How many falls off the bike? How many sleepless nights helping with homework? He couldn't make up for it, but he could make a new start. I need to talk to him. Diana grabbed his arm before he could go any further. Not like that, Leo. You can't just walk up and say who you are. Why not? He has a right to know. She sighed. And you're sure he wants to know? The question took Leo by surprise. He looked at Gabriel again. The boy kicked the ball into the goal and celebrated with his friends, laughing loudly. He seemed happy. What if I missed my chance? Leo muttered, feeling the weight of reality. Maybe it's not about you, Leo. Maybe it's about what's best for him. He closed his eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. So, what do I do? Diana squeezed his hand lightly. We take it one step at a time. At that moment, Gabriel left the field and approached where they were standing, drying his sweat with his shirt. When his eyes met Leo's, the young man frowned. Who's that? He asked Diana. Leo held his breath. A friend, Diana replied quickly. Gabriel held out his hand, not suspecting a thing. Gabriel. Leo shook his son's hand for the first time. Leo. He could barely hold back his emotion. Leo felt the strength of Gabriel's handshake, and for a moment, time seemed to slow down. The son he never knew he had was there, right in front of him, with no idea who he really was. So you're a friend of my mother's? Gabriel asked, still holding the towel over his shoulder. Leo exchanged a quick glance with Diana before answering. Something like that? Gabriel smiled. I hope she didn't scare you too much. She loves to pretend she's tough, but she's actually soft-hearted, Diana snorted. Do you want dinner tonight, or should I forget about cooking? See, perfect example. Gabriel winked at Leo, laughing. Leo observed every detail, the way the young man expressed himself, the small gestures, the ease with which he broke the ice. He wondered how many times they had passed each other unaware of the bond that united them. Did you live here too? Gabriel asked, curious. Yes, a long time ago. Why did you come back? Leo hesitated. Could he tell the truth right then and there? Could he destroy all that boy's stability with a single sentence? Business, but also some unfinished business from the past. Gabriel nodded. I hope it has nothing to do with land. People here hate it when outsiders try to buy everything. Leo laughed, feeling a tightness in his chest. I've heard something like that. Gabriel stared at him for a moment as if analyzing something invisible. It's funny. You have a familiar way about you. Leo held his breath. Diana quickly changed the subject. You must be tired, Gabriel. Would you like to have dinner at home? Of course. He took one last look at Leo and smiled. It was nice to meet you, man. Leo returned the smile. It was my pleasure. As Gabriel walked away, Diana sighed. He liked you. Leo felt a lump in his throat. He has no idea who I am. He still doesn't. Leo looked at her. And when he does? She didn't answer. Neither of them had that answer. The moment came sooner than Leo expected. He had spent the night in bed, going over every possible scenario. But in the end, no matter how he imagined it, Gabriel would have his own reaction, and Leo had to be prepared for any of them. The next morning, Diana called him to her house. Gabriel was there, sitting on the sofa with his arms crossed. The relaxed look that Leo had seen in the park had disappeared. "Okay," the young man began, looking from his mother to Leo. "What's going on?" Leo felt his stomach turn. Diana opened her mouth to speak, but he interrupted her. "I'll tell you." She hesitated but nodded. Leo took a deep breath before facing Gabriel. "What I'm about to tell you will change some things, but I need you to listen to me all the way, okay?" Gabriel frowned, visibly uncomfortable. "Okay, go ahead." Leo glanced at Diana briefly before continuing. "I'm your father." The silence was overwhelming. Gabriel blinked a few times as if he had misunderstood. Then he laughed, humorlessly. "Oh, great! It's a prank, isn't it? Is this the moment when a hidden camera appears?" "It's not a prank," Diana said softly. Gabriel suddenly stood up. "This doesn't make sense. My father—" He stopped, confused. "You were adopted." Leo continued, his voice low but firm. "Your family raised you with love, and I respect that. But Diana never wanted to hide the truth from you." Gabriel's face hardened. "But you did. It wasn't our choice." Diana intervened. "We didn't have that choice." Gabriel took a step back. "That's absurd. I lived 19 years thinking I knew who I was. Now out of the blue, you turn up and drop this bombshell. I understand that you're angry. You don't understand anything." Gabriel exploded. "I don't know who you are." Leo felt the impact of those words. Gabriel shook his head as if trying to organize his thoughts, and then looked at his mother. "I need some time." And he left without looking back. Leo closed his eyes, feeling an emptiness growing inside him. "We lost him, didn't we?" Diana took his hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. "Not yet." The following days were a mixture of silence and uncertainty. Gabriel didn't answer any messages or calls. Diana respected her son's space, but Leo felt like every second was an eternity. Then, one unexpected afternoon, while Leo was sitting in the cafeteria, staring at a cup of cold coffee, the door opened and Gabriel walked in. "We need to talk." Leo looked at him, trying to gauge his tone. There was no anger in the boy's eyes, but there was something that seemed even harder to face. Confusion. Of course. They went out to walk around the square. The wind blew lightly, but the air between them was charged. "I don't know how to deal with this," Gabriel began, kicking a pebble on the ground. "Suddenly, my whole life seems like a lie." Leo nodded, giving him room to speak. "I love my parents. They're incredible, but knowing that you exist makes me feel like I've lost something I never knew was mine." Leo swallowed. "You lost it. I lost it. We've all lost it." Gabriel stopped and stared at him. "And now, what do you want from me?" Leo took a deep breath before answering. "I want whatever you're willing to give me. If it's nothing, I'll take it. If it's a little, I'll take it, and never let go." Gabriel studied him for a moment before letting out a heavy sigh. "You can't make up for lost time." Leo nodded. "I know, but maybe we can build something new." Gabriel frowned. "Like what?" Leo smiled. "I don't know. A friendship, or at least living together without deadly glances." The young man let out a short laugh. "All right. No death stares for now." Leo felt a weight come off his shoulders. "That's a start." They were silent for a moment, until Gabriel crossed his arms and gave him a suspicious look. But look, Just for the record, I still don't trust you 100%. Leo laughed. Fair enough. Gabriel held out his hand. Let's see if you can really get to know me. Leo squeezed his son's hand tightly, feeling something new being born there. It wasn't the past restored, but it was the future beginning. And that was enough.